I got very much into the etymology of words when I wanted to deepen my understanding of our own culture. You know, where do things come from? Why do we say, oh, it's raining cats and dogs? Well, that's from medieval times when the cats and dogs would be on the rafters in the house under thatched roofs, which would leak onto the rafters when it rained, and the cats and dogs would start to slip off. Canopy beds. Oh, so many of us, when we're young women, we want a beautiful canopy bed. Well, the canopy was to keep the scat from the insects and the pets from falling on you while you were sleeping. The etymology of words in reference to women is very different than what we are led to be. For example, virgin and whore and things like that. Man, the word man. Man identified our species. And then there were separate terms for male and female. And that takes us back to the Bible, where man was created in God's image. Male and female, they were made. And so one would have to know the original languages that these texts were written in, and where it says man as in our species, one of our species, not denoting whether or not it's male or female, and which original terms applied to the female of our species and the male of our species in those languages. So you learn things like spelling. We are casting spells when we write and we practice our spelling. Words have power. It was one of the things we were taught by the fallen angels. It comes from that. That was not something human beings needed. You'll see a lot of indigenous cultures still keep an oral tradition. They don't write down their stories. They don't write down their language. I became aware that the sciences are just another religion. You are instructed by approved instructors, especially nowadays approved by the government, who have you memorize sets of answers in order to get a degree and identify as these things. So people, it doesn't speak of their intention. That may not have been their intention. However, they end up as, the high priest in the magic of pharmacia. That would be your doctor. That would be your surgeon. That would be your specialist. They're a high priest in the magic of pharmacia. Try and live your life without a doctor. And our illness is the demons striking us because of our sins. When I was living off-grid, not participating in any of the witchcraft of the system, I was perfectly healthy. Never had a health issue. But it's when I come back and I start engaging in what I learned today is scrying, screens. I've been perfectly aware all this time. There are images like if somebody, oh, this is, you hear the scary music start, I fast forward, I go through it. Because if I make eye contact with the character, I'm dealing with that spirit. Actors and performers are channelers. They're channeling, they're embodying, becoming host to spirits of a character, and you're interacting, you're viewing, you're being entertained. You are entertaining that character, that spirit that the performer is hosting. And I do that too, like with videos. I watch, like, you're probably making eye contact if you're looking at my eyes while I'm looking in here. And so you have scryed, and this video, whatever in me is moving me to do this, is what has answered. So there's the balance of, we've already been exposed to these things. And Enoch would be a good example of being told by the spirits before God to write these things down so that they would survive these teachings, these conveyance of what happened would make it to us, the last generation. So now we live in a culture where every aspect of our lives are governed by witchcraft, demonology of every kind and every sort. It's overwhelming, but I can't give in to hopelessness, because that would be lacking faith in our Creator. Good grief, I just want to go back in the woods, man. We are overrun. A pandemic comes, and it can only strike those who our Creator allows it to strike. And my family smoked. I took up smoking when I was 18. Smoking is another form of interacting with spirits, an offering. It's like a burnt offering. Now, according to Native American lore, the smoke carries your prayers to Creator. And one of the reasons I get stuck and I had such a hard time with smoking was because that was the signal for me to step out, and then I would become reflective and I would get answers and insights and things like that. But then my lungs get struck. So that is obviously not how we want our prayers carried up to our Creator, is through cigarette smoking. Again, trying not to let myself get overwhelmed with hopelessness. I've been called out of my isolation away from mainstream society and all this technology for a reason. I did have to engage in a measure of witchcraft in order to do that. And it was allowed that I engage in that, because only in doing it did I see see, know the depths, the access to us, the overwhelming amount of demons in our reality. Pictures on walls, wherever you see eyes, wherever you see even one hole, a demon can peer through it. When I was walking through the desert, they would say, the tweakers, they would always be playing with the rocks and arranging the rocks and all of this. And when I got into this state of being that I used to get out of there, and I would walk around and I would cover the holes. They would have, certain holes marked because these belong to certain, demons to look through there. And I was just given an awareness of absolutely everything, every symbol, what words meant, like somebody's nickname Domino. That's a designation. A Mama D is a designation. It's a title. And they are handlers. And I learned all about all these things. And it's just ingratiated in everything out here. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And you can, what hope is there for me? I'm engaging in this. That's a sin. And at the same time, because I didn't understand that I could receive understanding from our Creator without the aid of other people and knowledge and experiences stored up in writings throughout history. The whole reason I've made so much advancement in understanding is because I had access to this scrying tool back before it was infiltrated with AI, when computers became a common thing in upper class homes. You could do legitimate research. You could access, history, etymology. All of that was not tainted by AI and so much misinformation, because it was used by the upper class primarily. And as the lower classes, the free phones come out, that's a tracking device, a recording device, and a scrying device. I mean, just the telephone alone, the TV, the radio, we're dialing in, we're scrying for what we want to hear. We're scrying for the voice that we want to interact with. That's all I can say. And yet has never been given to me to be able to just walk off into the woods and survive. I've tried it. How many times in my life I have dropped everything. House, property, horses. Horses were my passion. They were my heart. They were my wings. But I would not get into contentions over property if it was going to keep me bound to unhealthy relationship. And so I've burnt everything, including the shoes for my feet, to make a point. And then when that point's not appreciated, I've got a trash bag, a kid on the hip, and I'm literally walking through the woods to the closest house where I could call domestic violence services. I've tried to just go off in the woods and camp and not come out again. It doesn't work. I'm not sustained out there. And so that's how I know that that is not for me at this time. And I am so appreciative of the times when I was allowed to just house sit for somebody out in the middle of nowhere with no phone. The only reason why I knew what had happened in the world since the last time I was out in the world was because I had old newspapers. It's like, oh, same headlines, different faces. I don't need to know anymore. Just, And of course, because I'm sinning, I'm suffering. And I think that's why it's so important to me. Because I'm hoping that getting into covenant with our Creator, researching covenant, learning how to prepare for it. I've already been marked, so there's already a covenant there. Now that it's hitting me, it would be a renewing of the covenant on my part, a coming to awareness and understanding of the covenant, what that means. Even if it doesn't mean being delivered from physical suffering, having to use this because my housing is dependent upon, working through this with people and stuff like that. So we shall see. But this is for anybody who wasn't aware of the depths of the depravity that we've been led into. And it is like the days of Noah. All those pyramids, all that ancient technology that is now being recreated, now infiltrating the entirety of the world. Like people, anytime they would talk about, oh, all the ancient practices of ancient Egypt, of Atlantis, we need to know these things. I'm like, those cultures destroyed themselves. They were destroyed. Why would you want to imitate, like, oh, the Egyptians had a practice for, living forever. We need to seek that out. It's like, if they had a practice that was successful to live forever, they would still be here. You would be interacting with them, and they would tell you, oh, I've lived this long because I used this practice. But they're not. They all got disembodied. All these fallen spirits and angels. And they have to acclimate and occupy more, new bodies with each generation. Some more frequently than that, because they kill people off left and right. That's not the point. Or maybe it is. All of it. All of the wisdom and the knowledge becomes a religion. Numerology, numbers, the matrix, learning about the matrix that we're in. This is the form that was created for us to have this experience, to become individuated beings. This is the way it works. And you could put, these things all happened in common, so therefore that is the answer and how we can hack this matrix and get out of it and bring the Messiah. No, the creator of the matrix can come in at any time and, flick the switch of the matrix. Is not governed by the rules of the matrix. And so if we walk by faith, we don't have to understand the metaphysics of anything in our environment. You love, honor, and respect all of creation, all of the creatures therein, you're good. You don't have to worry about, being healthy. Or I had a childbirth. It was even a VBAC, which means vaginal after C-section. And labor was very uncomfortable. But when it came down to the doctor examines me and tells the attending nurse or, nurse's aide, okay, she's fully dilated. She's going to want to push. I looked at him. I said, it's okay for me to push? He says, yeah. One big, huge in-breath and one big roar. I pushed. And it was like I opened up every level of my being in pure ecstasy. And that child was out. You hear, if you do the research, you'll hear of women having an orgasm during childbirth. You can. This is real. And what a blessing that was. I popped up after she popped out, and I'm like, oh, can I do that again? But of course I couldn't, because the insurance changed and you were no longer allowed to have VBACs even if you had a successful VBAC already. They don't want women experiencing this blessing. They want the children traumatized, separated from the mother, not connected to the process, interfere with the bonding and all of that. Thankfully, I've been given the knowing, the promise, the feeling awareness. So it is as if I am experiencing it when I'm given this. What it's like to be just a human being with their mate, with their husband, wife, being pregnant and having a child in a perfect world. I was gifted that. So it is hard to come back to this reality when I can touch that. Because it's like that's what's ahead of me. That's the promise. Which my mind is going, well, no, I can't. I'm past menopause. Hello, Sarah. And then I'm faced with the hopelessness of I'm scrying. I'm making burnt offerings. I'm communing with demons. I'm consulting with them. I'm misled in my beliefs about my creator, totally flubbing up that relationship, speaking out of turn, speaking inappropriately, speaking false beliefs. Have hope despite all of this involvement. That in itself has to be a gift, because I can't summon that hope myself. Okay. That is the overwhelming